NVIDIA beat earnings expectations, but it wasn't the blowout some people had hoped for. CEO Jensen Huang confirmed that demand for AI compute power is still soaring, but is the stock already priced for perfection? This I found was pretty funny. This is why I find it difficult to trade like single stocks, because you have basically NVIDIA, their fourth quarter earnings report, they beat for revenue. They had a 78% increase from the same quarter last year, but people were expecting way more. They beat for
They beat on earnings, but only by a small amount. Both earnings and revenue were only beat. They only beat by about 3% on revenue and 4% on earnings,
right.
or 5% on earnings. So really not quite the blowout that we were hoping for. It just shows that Wall Street analysts actually did a pretty good job of projecting where they thought NVIDIA was going to show up.
What I find interesting is you can make billions, and still your stock can be like, forget it. I thought you were going to make it.
I mean, this is the thing that's always fascinating to me with NVIDIA in general. Showing that they reported $39 billion in revenue is just incredible to me. And earnings per share, of course, are still pretty impressive. So go ahead.
Still, we got the I always love when the CEO of a company comes out and acts casual on like CNBC or some news station, because I know the stock price is moving them. They're not here for nothing. They're not here just for giggles. And so Huang was on CNBC the other day, and I thought it was interesting what he was saying, that he's going to make the pitch here that we actually do need way more compute than you think. Because that was like the whole idea here, that with DeepSeek that came out, that hey, maybe we don't need as much compute for the training chips, we just need the inference chips, and maybe some of these stocks, these AI stocks, are overvalued. So let's just hear what he has to say over here.
That's on top of what we already knew to have POs and forecasts and such. The midterm comes from the fact that this year's capital investment for data centers is so much greater than last year's. And of course, we had a very large year last year. We had a great year last year. It stands to reason that with Blackwell and with all the new data centers going online, we're going to have a fairly great year. Now, long term, the thing that's really exciting is we're just at the beginning of the reasoning AI era. This is the time when AI is thinking to itself before it answers a question. Instead of just immediately generating an answer, it'll reason about it, maybe break it down step by step. It'll do maybe some searching in its own mind before it creates and composes a smart answer for you. The amount of computation necessary to do that reasoning process is 100 times more than what we used to do. So if you could imagine, we thought computation, the amount of compute necessary, was a lot last year. And then all of a sudden, reasoning AI, DeepSeek was an example of that. ChatGPT 4o is an example of that. Grok 3 reasoning is an example of that. So all of these reasoning AI models now need a lot more compute than what we used to
let me stop you there,
that puts even more load.
Because some people took DeepSeek to mean actually that you need less compute, right? Because the initial report was that they were doing more with less. But you're saying, in fact, some of what came out of DeepSeek was the opposite, that there's going to be more compute demanded. Unpack that for me.
There are 3 phases in how AI works, how AI is developed largely. Number 1 is pre-training. It's kind of like us going through high school. A lot of basic math, basic language, basic everything. That basic understanding of human knowledge is essential to do what's the next step, which is called post-training. In post-training, you might get human feedback. It's like a teacher showing it to you. We call it reinforcement learning, human feedback. You might practice and do thought experiments. You're just preparing for a test. You're doing a whole lot of practices. We call it reinforcement learning, AI feedback. You could either also do tests and practice, and we call it reinforcement learning, verifiable reward feedback. So now basically it's AIs teaching AIs how to be better AIs. That post-training process is where an enormous amount of innovation is happening right now. A lot of it happened with these reasoning models. And that computation load could be 100 times more than pre-training. And then here comes inference, the reasoning process. Instead of just spewing out an answer, when prompted, it reasons about it. It thinks about how best to answer that question, breaks it down step by step, might even reflect upon it, come up with several versions, pick the best one, and then presents it to you. So the amount of computation that we have to do, even at inference time now, is 100 times more than what we used to do when ChatGPT first came out.
So this is pretty important to cover. And I know that we've discussed in the past the relevance of Jevons paradox here as well, because I think he's describing two pretty important facets of our AI experience as we work with these tools. And that is much more of this engaging interactive process of getting the model to reason through the things that you're talking about. And as you observe the model reasoning through things step by step, there's no reason that you don't necessarily catch back up with it and say, okay, I see how you've broken that down, but I need you to consider this too, right? And you're giving it more feedback to help it reason even further and take the thought process even further, effectively helping AI overthink, if you will, or deeply analyze something. So as the problem spaces increase and we use these tools more frequently and more people start to engage with them, and the cost becomes more affordable to us as like hardware and these models are commoditized, I think it's fair to say that NVIDIA will continue to see increased surging demand for hardware as more and more companies jump on to try to create these environments to use these tools. There's no question about it.
Yeah, it's like that the unit of intelligence, I guess if you wanted to break it down like that, that I was thinking before, that a lot of people were thinking was this like, standard unit that we're all just guessing at. Turns out there's refinement that can be done to it so that it actually gets purer and purer and purer and purer and purer. And so you go, wait, well then if it's only limited, then we're back to, hey, if this is only limited by the amount of compute and energy that we have, then increasing compute and energy, which is the case he's making. He's like, no.
Well, the case he's also making is that it's not just about pre-training anymore. That's been the large headline news, is around what it took to actually build the model at OpenAI versus what it took to build the model at DeepSeek. Huang is making the argument that's a part of the equation, sure, but now you have to couple that with the compute requirements for just reasoning through problems or thinking through additional steps and working through additional prompts. And I'm saying couple that with increased demand for the products themselves as more and more companies start to adopt AI, and the compute requirements continue to go up.
That's right. It's like when in metallurgy, if you go from iron to steel, and then you're like, okay, the steel is way more durable, lasts way longer, doesn't rust the same way, all that. And you're like, okay, we're going to need less of this. And turns out, no, it actually need way more steel. And then you find out if you break the steel and then weld it together, that welded steel is stronger than the steel it was originally. So then you have this more process that's happening. And so we're finding this with the I don't know how much you're using the deep research for Grok or for ChatGPT or whatever.
A little bit, yeah.
And when I'm seeing it processing the information in the back, and it's doing all these questioning that I would have done, and then now I get to the end and it's way more robust, I go, oh, we're at the beginning.
Right.
Like this is going to be incredible.
Except for when it's wrong about its reasonings for the pullbacks there. What it didn't highlight in your Grok research is the effect that the options market had on our pullback here.
The only reason it did that is because Grok doesn't have access to all the YouTube videos and all the. Once it does, my Notebook LM, it had that information. So I'll grab the Grok information, paste it into Notebook LM that has all of Kem Carson's videos, and then it'll be like, hey, this is what Kem would have said accordingly, and then I just go back and forth.
Fascinating.
But I don't want to be that. I want the AI to do that. Okay, let's just get it together.
All the resources together. Yeah, it should have a constant feed of everything happening on all these platforms, right?
That's right. So if we take a look at just want to take a look at the stock here for NVIDIA real quick before we leave. And the so what is it? A 20% pullback from the high, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, about a 20% pullback. And would you say that, like, it would seem to me that this drop that we had since February, well, the drop started before the drop in the market, right? So the drop in the market started like around February 21st, if I'm not mistaken, and NVIDIA started beforehand. But the long-term buy for this, I'm trying to convince myself that every dip here should be purchased because the case hasn't been invalidated for AI. In fact, I'm more convinced of it now than ever before.
Mhm.
So I'm wondering here, like, at what levels would you actually want to buy this? If I was going to go based on my signals, man, I'm never going to get $82 on this.
I think, interestingly, today's close is pretty fascinating to me. So there is a trend line forming at the more recent low of April 19th of 2024 and August 5th of 2024, and these last two lows. That trend line would help me feel pretty confident that we may have closed at a decent pullback here. There are some short-term moving averages you could probably consider from here, and see if support continues. But I would probably start dollar cost averaging in from here, but also expect that the price could pull back even further to around $99 or $100 a share before starting to add a little bit more.
I see. Okay. So I'm going to wait till after the window of weakness that
Yeah, given
Master Kim
the
Carson.
context that we still expect the market could pull back another 7 or 8%, then yeah, NVIDIA is going to be a huge participant in that. So I would not put everything all in on NVIDIA just yet.
Excellent. No, just all in on Bitcoin. Catch the TradersPost is an automated trading platform designed to take the friction out of executing your strategies. Whether you're trading stocks, futures, or crypto, TradersPost connects seamlessly to your broker or exchange, giving you the flexibility to automate your trades without missing a beat. If you're tired of being the bottleneck in your own success, it's time to let automation do the heavy lifting. Head over to TradersPost.io and see how easy it is to streamline your trading. TradersPost, because your strategy deserves to run at full speed.